Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video is we're going to talk the pros and cons of every Warhammer 40k army, and in particular we're going to talk about the Chaos armies in this video. Now we did a video a little while ago talking about the 5 best and worst armies to get into Warhammer 40k with, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the Chaos armies in particular and the pros and cons that each different Chaos army in Warhammer 40k has when getting into that faction. So without further ado, we're going to look at things from how they perform on the tabletop, what they can do for you on the tabletop, also the miniatures they have available to them, the range, how updated the range is, how updated their book is at this current point in time as well. So let's get cracking on and let's have a look at all the Chaos armies and see how we feel about them all. And so we start off talking about Chaos Demons. And so what are the pros and cons of Chaos Demons if we're going to pick them up to start our Warhammer 40k journey? Well, for starters, they do have a good variety of different troop options, though I guess this can be countered by the fact that those troop options definitely need to be taken in larger numbers of 20 or 30 models, so this sort of ramps up the cost of needing them. While they are relatively cheap box sets to begin with, they do sort of, up in price because you need to buy more of them. So it sort of is, a bit of par for the course on the average cost there, really. You do have loads of different psychic disciplines. None of them are particularly great, but you can cherry pick the spells you want out of them and use them. This does give you a wide variety of different options, which is cool, and nonetheless. You can heavily specialize as well when focusing on one specific demon type, or one chaos god. So if you go an all Tzeentch army, now this in itself can be crippling because it does mean your army maybe becomes a one-trick pony, a heavy psychic based force in Tzeentch, or a heavy combat force based in Khorne. It really does mean that you sort of specialize in this one thing and only do this one thing if you go down that road though. But you do have gorgeous centerpiece models. Now that all the different Chaos Gods, Greater Demons have been updated, the Bloodthirster, Lord of Change, Keeper of Secrets, are all absolutely fantastic miniatures, along with the Great Unclean one, and there's also some really great resculpts of some of the demon models in there from different ranges as well. Things like Be'lakor is a really cool model. Cons, you don't have access to the most powerful stratagems in the game, and the codex does need a current update. It is currently sitting on its 8th edition codex and isn't in the most competitive place at the moment. No shooting in a shooting game. While I guess you can look at, say, a game like Age of Sigmar and say, oh, there's armies that don't do combat really well in that, but it's less of an issue. I think not having shooting requires a proper board setup and not playing in like open fields to really get the most enjoyment out of playing your army in the game. For me, they're a solid army, and they've got some great ways to get into the army cheaply, but they do definitely have their hindrances as well. Moving on to Chaos Knights. Now, this one is pretty simple. First of all, you're going to need a couple of models to play the army, and it is super fun to play that big mean machine all-mech army. You do have some really cool objective scoring bonuses thanks to the balanced data slate, and your army does pack quite a punch. Knights can put out a tremendous amount of power, and you can build them for combat as well, which is pretty fun. This in itself does lead to some straight problems. First of all, they're big models. This means cost is high, so that is definitely something. And large models, while it might seem like large areas might take paint quicker, they're larger, so they do actually take longer, and they take a lot more effort to make look as great as they can be than actually smaller models do. Now, the army isn't the most competitive faction at the moment, but Knights are that sort of place where sometimes people just can't deal with them, and sometimes you'll smash people away, and sometimes you'll be smashed away because the opposing army can deal with you. It's a very swingy style army. It does rely, I think, on a little bit of conversion skills to really make this army look right for me at the moment. There's a couple of knight upgrade sprues for some of the larger knights, but things like your armigers and stuff don't currently have upgrade sprues available to them, and I think we definitely need some true Chaos Knight kits to really make this army look exactly how it should on the tabletop. Moving on to Chaos Space Marines, and maybe perhaps the most popular army in the Chaos faction, just due to the wide variety of armies that they do represent on the tabletop, they do have some really good pros to them, especially narratively. They have an amazing, rich background lore. The story of how the Chaos Space Marines came to be, and what they are, and who they now are, and what they're trying to achieve is fantastic. And of course, a pro for them is they're not a corpse worshipper. Unlike those Imperial Brethren, they don't worship some corpse sitting on a throne, so that is definitely a pro. Now, they do have a wide variety of units and options for all styles of play. This means you can mold your Chaos Space Marine army into so many different things when playing the game. You can build it to be a combat, a shooting, a fast-moving mechanized army. You can have lots of demon engines. You can have sort of a mix of summoners and demons. There's some really cool options to play around with the Chaos Space Marines. And I think this is really where the army stands out for me, is this wide variety of tools mixed with a fantastic array of different background options and sort of background tidbits to sort of lean and build your army on is what building a Chaos Space Marine army is all about for me. It's an amazing breadth of mix of units and lore that just is so great. Now, they do have some cons for them. They currently do need a 9th edition book, and hopefully when they get that book, that'll give them the magical 2 wounds, as they currently all have 1 wound per model, unlike their Imperial brethren. Apparently worshipping a corpse gives you an extra wound. Some kits are terribly outdated. I'm thinking things like Khorne Berserkers definitely need an updated kit, and there are other kits among the range. We are seeing a couple of cool new updated kits in the Chosen and the Warpsmith coming out in the Eldritch Omens box, which is great. And hopefully we start to see more Chaos Space Marine kits getting a re-release and getting an update very soon. The kits that are updated do look fantastic. They have some really great miniatures in those updated styles, from the amazing new character models we've got to Warp Talons and stuff like that. There are some really cool updated kits and more, I guess, more new kits than some of the old ones that definitely need that update. Moving on to the Death Guard and the pros for them. Well, they're a really tanky force. They've got some cool rules and they're quite tough for Space Marines, even for Space Marines. This is an army that can really sort of sit and take a little bit of a beating. They're generally tougher than your average sort of Space Marine, and they do have some cheap bodies in the form of the little plague zombies that they've got available to them, to really just give them that sort of mix of like cheap expendable bodies mixed with some really tanky, heavy elite infantry options. So this gives them a nice sort of balance of like how to sort of disperse your force. On top of that, you're generally quite good at that sort of mid-range firepower. They've got some really fast-moving vehicles, things like the Blight Haulers and stuff like that are really cool, useful pieces to have around the battlefield. And you've also, got one of the most amazing centerpieces available in all of Warhammer in the Mortarion model. He's a fantastic centerpiece model for your army that you can really build your whole force around, and he's an absolute beatstick on the table. For me, the single biggest con for Death Guard is some of the sculpts are monopose. This is particularly apparent with the Plague Marine kit, where there's a bunch of different Plague Marines, all of which are monopose and come in these odd weird packs of characters. I'd like to see them maybe release a multi-part kit, or at least a kit containing 10 models with all the options I need to build my Plague Marines, other than this sort of way I have to currently do it. That being said, the army competitively is sort of somewhere in the middle ground. They have a 9th edition book, but definitely aren't one of the top tier sort of armies rocking around at the top of tournaments taking names. For me, Death Guard are a solid mid-table army, and they're a great army to get in. Painting them is an absolute pleasure as they come together really easy with paint on them. The sort of dirty, rusty scheme that Death Guard have available to them is certainly a massive pro for the army, as it can be painted up really easily with some really simple and basic techniques. And lastly, Thousand Suns. So the pros of them, if you're into an army that plays heavy in the psychic phase, this is a heavy psychic power focused army. There's tons of different psychic powers and good casters from Magnus to Ahriman throughout the army. So you can definitely have an army that really focuses on that phase. If that's something that appeals to you, then that's definitely a pro for the army. If it isn't, well, maybe it's a con if that's not something you want to be in on. The army is fairly simple to paint. Large blue areas and then some nice little gold details on them can get the vast majority of work done. A lot of the detail on these miniatures is raised, so that it makes it really easy to pick out after you've done your sort of blue base coats to begin with. And of course, you've got a fantastic centerpiece in Magnus the Red, an amazing centerpiece for your force. Now, cons. I do find they have a limited array of Thousand Suns specific kits for the army, and for me, the biggest disappointment in this army is the Zangor just plain aren't good. This is a bit of a mid-tier sort of army that never really took anything by storm, but they can definitely hold their own on the tabletop and are one of the good performing armies. Not one of the greats, but definitely a solid mid-tier army for Warhammer 40k. It can really do the damage if your opponent isn't expecting to face something so heavy psychic powered or not prepared to face your Thousand Suns. They might be caught unawares by just how much you can do in that psychic phase. It's got some really cool bits and pieces you can do here and there with the army, and the psychic phase just allows you to do all these really cool different things with the army. Well, thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fine little community here, you can do so by joining our Discord server, which is linked down in the description of the video. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel more financially, you can do so either by joining our Patreon or YouTube members, of which you'll find both the links of both of them down in the video's description as well. As a special thank you to everyone who does support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members, we'd like to give a shout out to them all. So a special thanks to our Patreons, Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater and Samuel. And a special shout out to our YouTube members as well: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Rollis, Ronya, Vinny, Lockloric, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Sean Scott, DS, and Ariana Edwards. And a special thanks lastly to, first of all, Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork you can see pictured here for the channel. And a special shout out to Xmorphic, who does all the amazing background work for our Discord server. You're both absolute legends. Thank you all for watching once again. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay safe everyone, stay well. Most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.